Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and good morning everyone. Thank you for joining me today and welcome to iComplete's live product webinar, Gain Full Visibility of Company Spend in Real Time. Before we start today's session, just allow me to go through a few navigation pointers about the GoToWebinar service. To ensure the best audio quality possible, everyone apart from myself is muted. You can ask questions at any time by typing them in the questions tab located in the control panel to the right of your screen. I will allocate some time at the end of this webinar to respond to your questions. This session is being recorded and will be made available to you after the webinar has finished. Please note that you can find Complete on Twitter at CompleteP2P, and we encourage you to tweet during today's webinar using the hashtag CompleteLive. My name's Charlotte and I'll be your presenter today. I'm part of iComplete's commercial team and we'll be happy to respond to any of your questions you may have. So please feel free to send them through the chat during the demo. If you have any questions after the webinar, you can also tweet me at char_complete_. So before we go any further, I'd like to start by sharing a couple of statistics with you around the accounts payable process, which I hope you will find interesting. So firstly, did you know that the average cost for a business to process an invoice is between £3.50 and £8.60, with problematic invoices under certain circumstances costing £15 plus? Also, did you know that 3.6% of invoices which are manually entered include an error caused by data entry? This was highlighted in a survey conducted of over 500 UK finance professionals, where the main findings were that their manual AP processes were time-consuming, they suffer from process inefficiencies, they receive lots of supplier queries around the invoice status, including late payments, and they suffer from a general lack of visibility and control, with these issues causing problems across the business. So what we are going to be looking at today is how iComplete can help you to transform this. So I'd like to briefly give you an overview of Complete's heritage, platforms and technologies. So firstly, we have our iComplete platform, which is our established spend management solution, which unites budget holders and finance through a comprehensive procure-to-pay product tailored to each business's specific requirements and integrated with their finance system. The modules include, as you can see, purchase order, purchase invoice, contract, expenses, timesheet, process and plan. And these can be implemented independently or used as components to configure a platform which enables you to manage all elements of the purchase to pay process. Next, we have the Complete e-invoicing portal, which is the technology we built in-house, which utilises artificial intelligence and OCR capabilities to capture and process invoice data. We already have over 20,000 suppliers onboarded in the portal, processing around £8 billion in spend per annum. The portal delivers 100% e-invoices, harvesting information from various smart documents. And it's the portal technology that we've utilised in our SaaS product that we'll be looking at today, iComplete. Currently, we have real-time integrations available for Xero, QuickBooks, Sage 50, Sage 200 and Accounts IQ, with additional integrations to be released moving forward. It can also operate as a standalone system for any business using a different accounting application. We do have a key roadmap for development, starting with order functionality due to be released in the next month, which is incredibly exciting, which will transform iComplete into a more comprehensive spend management platform, covering the full purchase to pay process, but ultimately still SaaS, still for SMEs, and very much self-service. So just to give you an overview of where we sit in the market right now and how we got here. So looking at the vertical axes, it represents the total cost of ownership for the software, with the horizontal representing the corporate turnover of the types of businesses purchasing the kind of software. So looking at our eComplete platform, it's used by customers integrated to Sage 50, Sage 200, but also all the way up to SAP and Oracle, for example. So it's a really flexible platform suitable for a variety of businesses. And what you can see from this graph is that the cost of ownership for those larger ERP systems, it is higher, and that's because of the level of implementation required for the eComplete system. But what Complete clearly saw was that there was a gap in the market for the lower cost accounting platforms, particularly those online platforms. Hence why iComplete was developed to cater for this. So iComplete does integrate with those lower end platforms, those online cloud-based platforms, but also is scalable to those larger accounting softwares as well. For businesses that might only have relatively simple invoice management and automation requirements. And this means that Complete can now offer our e-invoicing service to every size and shape of organisation. So talking about e-invoicing, what is it? So ultimately it allows for a 100% paperless process. Its 99.99% accuracy is achieved through the use of new AI technology alongside more traditional OCR. The capturing of header and line information on all invoice formats, including PDF, Excel, Word, .html, obviously scanned paper as well. And it allows you to view and report on all of this information in real time. So why AI? An investment in AI is an investment in the future, and that's also because you'll already be receiving a high percentage of your supplier invoices as PDF documents. This will only increase over the coming years, as this is a standard feature within most accounting softwares. And ultimately, it's quicker, it's more accurate, it's scalable for increasing volumes and growing businesses, and of course, it's much cheaper than printing invoices. So how does it work? You can simply ask suppliers to email invoices direct to your e-invoicing email address specific to your iComplete company. Suppliers are then onboarded as part of the service we provide, which allocates rules which are then validated for each new supplier. Once a supplier is onboarded, it's available to all of our customers. We've actually currently got around 30,000 suppliers already automated. And also 97% of all transactions received are downloaded for processing via our portal within 10 minutes of receipt. So it's highly likely that if you currently have a manual invoice capture and approval process, that it looks something like this. So invoices will currently be delivered to you in two formats: a paper invoice via post or a PDF invoice via email, which is printed on receipt. It then needs to be recorded in an invoice register, so you know you've received it. You then need to add the relevant department, GL, coding, further analysis. You then need to make a decision on who needs to approve that particular invoice, and then sort by which approver, who needs to see it first, and distribute any paper invoices to them, at which point they disappear from Finance's site. So the invoice is now with the approver, and approvers are busy people, and this has already been a long and slow process. You don't necessarily know when the approver will be able to get time to look at that invoice. With so much going on around them, the invoice might get lost. And if there are any queries at this stage, the invoice will need to be sent back to the beginning of this process. At this point, you're also at a high risk of duplication. After the invoice is finally approved, it then needs to be keyed manually into your accounting software, which is the first time you can actually see your financial liability. And finally, you file that paper invoice in one way or another. So looking at what the iComplete process looks like, invoices are emailed in either direct from your suppliers, or you can forward them straight from your email inbox into that e-invoicing portal. The portal will then capture the data from the invoice, providing you with validated header and line information within your iComplete system. And we know that 60 to 80% of invoices do tend to go to the same account code, VAT code, and approver, and this information can be defaulted within iComplete, so you don't have to repeat your actions each time you receive an invoice from a supplier. This means that we can deliver a coded invoice direct to the approver for them to view online or on our mobile approvals app. And then once that transaction has been approved, that validated invoice is posted directly into your accounting software, also retrieving a journal posting number which completes the end-to-end audit trail. So looking at this manual process, the steps which are eliminated are, you'll no longer need to print out invoices that come in via email. Keying into an invoice register obviously becomes redundant. With 60 to 80% of invoices having default account coding and approval process, the decision making required is minimised, leaving you to handle only the exceptions. You'll no longer need to distribute the invoices manually to approvers, and all of those tracking issues around paper invoices are also eliminated. Manually keying the invoices into the accounting system will be a thing of the past, and because all invoices are stored and tracked within iComplete in the cloud, there's no need to file that paper anymore, which gives you a 100% paperless but also a manageable process. So taking that into account, your new process could look as simple as this. PDF invoices are received and defaulted. They're sent directly to the appropriate approver for them to view online or on our mobile approvals application. And on approval, they're posted straight into your accounting system. So this is giving you real-time access to invoice information, wherever those invoices are in the process, and one single view of the truth. So you can remove paper and increase visibility, reduce the level of human interaction, and speed up the entire process. Access essential information in real time with comprehensive dashboards and reporting. And again, this gives you a 100% paperless accounts payable process. Okay, fantastic. So that was just a very quick introduction and background on Complete as a company, and very specifically the invoice capture and approval process. So what I'll do now is jump straight into a demonstration and show you around the product itself. So here we have our iComplete login page. As I explained, it's a SaaS product. It's accessible from any browser. And I'm going to log in as my demonstration user this morning. So Katrina here is what we would refer to as a super user. So the view that I have, the different tabs that I have access to, is all dependent on the user access that I have. So you can be an administration user, which gives you access to things such as configuration, an AP operator user, which ensures that you can be processing those invoices here, or an approver, so someone who needs to approve those invoices. So as we go through the demonstration, you'll see that different users have different views on their homepage. Here we have our e-invoicing email address. So as I mentioned, this is how you are getting those invoices into the system. You can provide this email address direct to your suppliers, or you can just forward invoices in yourself. If you do have multiple entities or multiple companies within your finance system, Complete is totally multi-tenanted. You can switch between companies very easily, which I'll show you here. So I've got a number of different companies set up, and you can also see that I've got different companies under my main tenant integrated with different finance platforms. So I've got one here integrated with Xero, one with QuickBooks, and this particular one we're looking at today, iComplete here, is integrated with Sage 50. You'll also notice that each company has its own specific email address, so really easy to differentiate between each company and sending those invoices in. Next thing we have here is a countdown on credits. So within the system, pricing is based on two parts. The first is a software subscription related to the number of users you require, 1 to 5 users, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, etc. And that's a monthly rolling subscription, or you can purchase 12 months up front for a discount. The second part of the pricing is what we call transaction credits, and these can be pre-purchased within iComplete. The more credits you purchase, the cheaper they are per credit. So every time you email an invoice in, and iComplete extracts that data and delivers it to you, that's 1 transaction credit deducted from your allowance, header and line detail every time, and you just chip away at that transaction credit bundle as you continue to use the system. They have a 3-year lifespan, so instead of having an amount per month, you have an amount purchased up front, and you can use those up as you go through. Final thing to just show you on the home page, we have a question mark up here, and the first thing I can look at is page guides. So with the product being self-service, there's lots of really helpful information throughout each screen. If I want to have a better idea of what I'm looking at or find out some more information, I can use those page guides. I can also access my support services. So this will open an additional tab. This will take me through to our online knowledge base, which is called iClick. Now within iClick, I can get information about what's new features being released within the product, updates, resources, which includes documentation, videos, FAQs, etc. And this is also how I can contact the iComplete support team if I need to. Fantastic. So back within iComplete, I'll just show you initially a couple of configuration items because I think it's helpful to understand how easy it is to set up. The first being our manage users. So I've got a list of my users here. I can see what role they have. So as I mentioned, we've got those 3 roles: approver, AP operator, administrator. I'll just jump into Jessica as an example. So you can see here, all you need to add a user is a name and an email address, and they'll receive an email to say that you've invited them to join iComplete. And as you would expect, they can follow a link, log in, create their own password, etc. We also have language options definable at user level. So if you do have multiple entities, or you have users in foreign countries, or who would prefer to use the system in a foreign language, we've obviously got English, German and Spanish, with more to be released over the coming months. So on the right hand side, we're looking at our permissions. So again, if you've got multiple entities, I can provide access or deny access at a company level, which is really important. And then you decide what type of user access this user has per company. So are they an approver? Yes. Are they an administrator? No. Do they need to be a company administrator? Again, multiple company feature. I can just switch that on or off. And are they an AP operator? Now, if this user is an approver, I also, because I'm looking at this from an admin view, I've also got the option to set a nominee. Now, a nominee is purely for approval users, and this is effectively an out-of-office function. So if I know that Jessica is going on holiday for 3 weeks, we don't want there to be a backlog of invoices that require approving while she goes away. So I can select another user to approve those invoices in her absence. Alternatively, the same way you'd set your out-of-office on your email, you can set it for yourself up here in the set nominee function at approver user level as well. A couple more things under permissions. Global permissions, very straightforward. Does the user have access to subscription options? Fail posting management is just related to the integration with your accounting software, or access to edit transactions. So there might be some circumstances where, from a finance perspective or an accountant's perspective, you would like the approver to have the ability to amend coding or code the invoices themselves. You can switch that feature on very easily. And then our reports. So all of this data that we're capturing, we provide a number of out-of-the-box reports to our users. And of course, it's all about tailoring the view of the user so that they can see information that is interesting and of value to them. So for example, Jessica here is a managing director. She's probably less interested in seeing this invoices per day report, but is probably quite interested maybe in this cash requirements report. So I'll just switch that on for her. We also have the option to provide a user with universal access to transactions. So if this is switched off, it means that this user will only see invoices that she has approved or been involved in the approval of. If I switch this on, it means that, again, with her being our managing director, she's probably wanting to see invoices across all departments, not just invoices she's involved with. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back into configuration and show you one of the most important features within the product, which is our workflow. So thinking about invoice approvals, you might call them authorizations, approvals, sign-offs, however you call it within your business. Within iComplete, we call them workflows. We're talking about the process that an invoice goes through for approval. So I'll just show you an example. If I go into our finance department workflow, now again, you can have as many workflows within the system as you like, and as many steps in the workflow. There's no restriction to that. But we actually recommend that you look at building as much intelligence into the workflow as possible to reduce the number of actual approval chains. So I've just got a workflow name. I can decide whether this is an active workflow or not. And you can see I've got a couple of positions set here. So position 1 here, I have junior approval, and we've got an AP operator, our AP operator Claire in here. And then senior approval, I've got position 2. We've got our finance manager, which is this user Katrina. So straight away, this is a multi-step approval workflow. The invoice will come in, go to position 1, and then once position 1 has approved it, it will be delivered to position 2. Now, it might actually be the case that this finance department has multiple senior approvers. So I would like to add another approver into this senior approval position, and this turns that into an approval group. So that means that once the invoice has been approved at position 1, it will be delivered to any users that are in the group of position 2. So both Katrina and Phil will receive this invoice, but only one of them needs to approve it before it moves forward. So as it stands, if one of the senior approvers approves that invoice, because there's no further steps, it would post then straight into the integrated accounting software. Now, alternatively, we might have a final step. We might have a CEO that wants to approve finance invoices as well. So we'll just add Neil in there as an additional step. But actually, it might be the case that Neil doesn't want to see every finance invoice. So we have the option here to configure criteria against steps in the approval workflow. Now, the first criteria that I can configure against is what we call a threshold. And a threshold is a lower limit within iComplete, and that means if it is this value or over, then this user will see it. So for example, if I've set it at £2,000, it means that only invoices to the value of £2,000 or over will be delivered to this CEO step. So if I set that, so I can see that when the net value of the transaction is £2,000 or above, if it's less than £2,000, it will go to position 1, go through to position 2, and then be delivered and posted straight through into the finance system. So the threshold is the first way that you can add some dynamic routing. The second way you can configure criteria is under different conditions. So I have the option to select whether it's all of these conditions or if any of these conditions are met. I can add that just here. I can select a field to apply a condition to. So for example, if the department is equal to London, then Neil also would like to see it. And you can get incredibly sophisticated and clever all the way down to the line item level. So if the item description, for example, is equal to book, then Neil will also need to see it. So really thinking about the different types of invoices you're receiving from your suppliers and the different ways in which they need to be routed. Now we also have this concept, as you see here, of a simultaneous approval. Now this could be our managing director, who also needs to see finance invoices. So we'll just add her in there. But I might configure some criteria against Jessica as well. If I don't, it will mean that once the invoice has been approved at position 2, it will be delivered, if it's over 2,000, to both users of the next step, and that means that both of these users can view that invoice at the same time, but they are both required to approve it before it moves into the next step, so they see it and can approve it simultaneously. And those are our approval workflows. So really easy to configure. I can also move that position up if I need to, drag and drop, and really easy to update. Fantastic. So I'll just go back to our home page and jump into our key tray, which is obviously manage invoices. So again, the view that I've got here within the system is a super user view, an AP operator view in this case. So the unprocessed tray, the first tray, is where all invoices will be delivered to for the very first time. So they're emailed into the portal will extract the data, they will be delivered into the unprocessed tray. Each line here is an invoice, and that means that they need to be actioned by an AP user. So I get a summary overview of the invoice information, and it's also important to know that at any stage I can search or filter each column. If I've got particular invoices I need to process or something in particular I'm looking for, searchability is obviously incredibly important. So I sent an invoice in earlier today, you can see the 17th. Now I'm just going to jump in and show you around a little bit. So this is page 1 of 2, and the first page gives you a summary overview of the data that's been extracted by the e-invoicing portal. So here we've got our header information, obviously our supplier, net VAT and gross. Now we also carry out a supplier bank detail match. So here we've got a happy green piggy bank which says that these bank details are valid, and what we'll do is pull through any bank details that are associated to the supplier record within the accounting software, and if there are bank details present on the invoice we will read them and carry out a match. We'll obviously notify you if there is a mismatch, and if there aren't any bank details present either against the supplier record or on the invoice, this will just be greyed out to say that there aren't any details present to show. And then we've got our invoice data. So not only are we capturing obviously the net VAT and gross, but we're capturing all the line level detail, including unit cost, quantity, and also the item description for each line. So under analysis, we've got a couple of defaults that have been set for this particular supplier. So we've got our department preset to London, which is great, and our tax code has been preset as well. So these can be defaults either being pulled through from the accounting software, often suppliers have tax codes defaulted against them, or these can be defaults that are being created and managed within iComplete. So the lines are all in red because it's asking me to review them and enter my account code. So the first way that I can finish coding up this invoice is to use this quick actions feature. Select account code. Now here all of my codes are being pulled through from my integrated Sage 50 system, but I can also search by a particular code name or number if need be. So what I'm going to do is just allocate that refreshments code across each line. And you can see that transaction has been saved. The red lines have gone, and now what we've got are our available approval workflows ready along the bottom. So if I wanted to straight away, I can send this invoice off through an approval workflow. What I'll do instead is click our edit button to take us through to the second page, and I can see the original PDF of the invoice that was received. So important again to know that you never lose visibility on this PDF invoice. We'll also deliver any supporting documentation. So in this case, it's just the body of the email from the supplier. But if suppliers are emailing their invoices directly to your iComplete email address and they're sending other information alongside that invoice, maybe a delivery note or a ticket, those documents don't just disappear. We will deliver those to you within iComplete alongside the invoice, which assists with kind of a full document management process. And then on the right hand side, we've got a breakdown, again, a breakdown of the data that's been captured. So H here is for obviously our header information. So it's automatically mapped to the correct supplier within my finance system. We've also carried out a supplier reference check, so you'll see that there's a tick there, and that assures me that this supplier reference is unique. This is the invoice number that's been pulled off the invoice, and iComplete will read that number and cross-reference it with any other and all other invoices within the iComplete system to ensure that it's unique. This is again an essential anti-fraud validation to protect against duplicates and duplicate payments. And you'll be notified if we suspect it to be a duplicate, either as an error or as a warning, and that's up to you how you configure the system. I then also have the option to add a comment, and I can now also go into each line item. So if I had a requirement to actually code this invoice at line level, for example, those milk cartons line number 5 actually don't belong to our London department, they belong to our Doncaster department, I can manually update that. Fantastic. So just before I submit this invoice for approval, I'll just show you this option here, which is Map Supplier Defaults. Now, if I wanted to prevent myself from having to recode this invoice every time I receive an invoice from Crown Venue Catering, I could automate the allocation of that account code that we added, refreshments. You can see that department and tax code are already allocated, and I can go as far as allocating the correct workflow. So if I know exactly where this invoice needs to go to every time, I can go as far as defaulting the approval workflow, which gives me my best case scenario, which is invoices are emailed in from suppliers, they're captured via our e-invoicing portal, they come into iComplete, they're automatically coded based on these defaults, and they're delivered straight down the appropriate approval workflow. So that's an AP zero touch invoice. On this occasion, I will submit it manually just to show you how it works. So again, I've got my approval workflows along the bottom here. I'm just going to select that this is going to our department heads, our teas and coffees. I might not necessarily know, who's ordered that, so it's an approval group. So that invoice has been submitted, and what the system has done is, because I am viewing my invoices as an AP operator within the unprocessed tray, it's just pulled me through to the next transaction for me to handle. If I go back to the grid and jump into our submitted tray, I can see that that invoice has been submitted for approval. And the purpose of the submitted tray, again, it's an AP operator tray, a finance tray, is to ensure that finance accountants have always got a view of where those invoices are in the process. So I can see who the current approver is. So when an invoice is submitted for approval, the first approver in the workflow will receive an email to say that there's an invoice awaiting their approval, or if they're using the mobile approvals app, they'll get a push notification on their phone. Also important from the submitted tray, finance and the accountant has always got the ability to recall an invoice. So if you have defaulted a high number and there is a transaction in the submitted tray that you think isn't with the correct approver or needs to be coded differently, you've always got the right to recall that invoice back to the unprocessed tray. But what I will do at this point is just log off as our super user Katrina and just log back in as Rory, who is one of our department heads, so one of our approval users. So as I mentioned, different users will have different views. Rory's is purely an approver, therefore he'll only see manage invoices and those reports that he's been provided access to. So if I jump into our manage invoices tray for Rory, you will notice again that we've got a restricted tray view. So we've just got the awaiting approvals tray, approved and denied. So these are just for transactions that this user has been involved with. So here I've got a couple of invoices. If we look at this Crown Venue Catering invoice, I can see the exact same information that the AP operator sees. So I get the first page, I can see the header information, I can see that those bank details are matched, I can read and check all of the data that's been captured, but also view the analysis that's been added by my finance team. Now, if I was happy, I could add a comment or approve or deny from this page, but I'll click through again, bottom right, to our documents and timeline. So again, as an approver, I see the same information. I can see this original PDF, and I can also see the supporting documents associated to it. I've also got on the right-hand side my approval timeline, which is effectively the audit trail for the journey of this invoice. So I can see which user submitted it. I get a key summary of that invoice information, and I can see where it is in the approval process. So I could add a comment, it's not compulsory. But on this occasion, I'm just going to select to approve that invoice. I'm happy with the coding, I'm happy with that purchase. So that invoice has been approved. So if I jump into my approved tray, it will load up for me my historic archive of all of my approved invoices. Now, as you can see, today's date is just dropped into the top there. And what's happened is that it's immediately, within seconds, posted straight through into my integrated Sage 50 software. And what it has done is has pulled back this journal posting number associated to that transaction. So you've got the end-to-end audit of where that transaction has been delivered to in Sage. And obviously you can search by that journal number as well. So if I were to select this invoice that we've just been processing and click through to my documents and timeline, I can now see the exact date and time that that's been posted, the journal posting number for that invoice, and I also have this option here to get payment detail. So we're not just pulling back the journal number, we'll pull back in real time any information about the payment status. Now, obviously we've just posted this invoice, so it's going to be unpaid, but if there was a payment status paid associated to that transaction within my finance system, it would pull that information through to me. So a really key feature for approvers who tend not to have access to the finance system and might want to be able to view this key information. Again, helping with supplier queries and giving approvers and budget holders more control and visibility over their invoice process as well. Now, before we finish today, I'll just log back in as our super user Katrina and just jump in and show you a couple of the reports that we provide. So we have the reporting suite here. As I said, they're out of the box reports, activity based or financial reports. So activity based, very straightforward, the number of invoices per day, invoices pending approval. So if you're wanting to chase up approvers, you can. And then we've got the financial reports. So first I'll just show you the supplier spend report. Again, this is a key report, particularly for approvers who have those relationships with suppliers. They are running budgets. They want information about what they're spending. So I can select which supplier I'm looking at. I can select my time period that I'm interested in. It's going to provide me with quite a nice graph for that period. So I can export this graph to PDF if I like that. But most importantly, I can select the value. So looking at week commencing the 8th of April, I can select that and it's going to provide me with a full list of those transactions, which again is exportable to PDF or exportable to Excel, but I can also drill all the way down to view the original PDF invoice. So at all stages you can view that original PDF or the supporting document as well. So useful when it comes to understanding exactly what you're spending with suppliers. The ability to export to Excel means that you can utilize that data in other spreadsheets or upload it into other reporting applications you might be using. The final report I will show you here is our cash requirements report, a really key report when it comes to looking at invoices that require paying and when. Cash flow is incredibly important, so sometimes you might only want to be paying the invoices that actually need paying at that time. So because we're capturing those payment due dates associated to the standard terms for each supplier, we can populate this report for you. So I can select which company I'm looking at. I can select my date period. So if I start with today and look at the next couple of months maybe. And I can also group this by months or weeks. If I run a weekly pay run, I can see next week commencing the 22nd, what volume or value of invoices require paying in that time. Now the system is also pulling through my quarterly VAT repayments, and that's just for the invoices that have been processed obviously via iComplete. And you do have the option to manually input some information about payroll and PAYE contributions. Not compulsory, but the purpose of that being available is to give this total value here to be a more comprehensive cash requirements number. So if I'm looking at this £3,000 worth of invoices that require paying next week, I can select that value, and again it's going to give me a full list of those invoices and it's going to give me their status, so I can see which invoices have been approved, which ones are just saved, and again I can export to PDF, export to Excel. I can click to view the original invoice. So key if you're looking at having some further automation and information around deciding on which invoices to pay at which time. Okay, fantastic. So that's kind of a very quick end-to-end overview of how iComplete works. Just processing those incoming purchase invoices, processing them for approval and integrated through into your accounting software. So I'll just jump back into my presentation to finish. So just to quickly summarise the product's features as we've covered. So it is a SaaS online self-service solution. We support all invoice formats, PDF, Word, Excel, scanned paper. We provide full invoice data capture capability, which includes header, line and other information, such as those supplier bank details and those payment due dates. We have real-time integrations available as well as it functioning as a standalone system, and that integrates via a CSV download upload capability. The AI technology allows you to deal with only the exceptions to those preset defaults. We're also inbuilding some machine learning capability to improve that defaulting even more, to reduce the amount of interaction that the user needs to have with the system and with the invoices. And obviously we've got full visibility on all of those historic invoices, and that provides you with full document management and audit trail. And I guess as highlighted, those key benefits of this solution to your business would be it is a 100% paperless process. You can remove up to 90% of the invoice handling process. You can access real-time information around the status of any invoice anywhere from the moment it arrives. And the reporting capabilities allow you to streamline month-end accruals and visualize those cash flow requirements, as we saw, and as well as those anti-fraud validations, bank detail matching and protection against duplication. So iComplete is an incredibly smart and comprehensive solution for any business. Okay, fantastic. So I think we might have run a little bit over time, but I'm just going to see if we've got any questions. It seems we've got a few. I'm just trying to load them up. So question 1, can this be tied into a purchase order system, or does it have its own purchase order workflow? Great question. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we are in the process of releasing our purchase order capability. Now that will be available within the next month. It's currently in beta process at the moment. That capability will allow for users to raise a requisition, a request to buy within our application, push that through the approval workflow, the exact same workflow configuration as I showed you for the invoice side of things. And then obviously once that's finally approved, it will generate a purchase order, which can be sent out to suppliers. Then obviously by the time that invoice comes in, the system will carry out an automatic two-way match and process that matched invoice for approval before posting into the accounting software. So that is coming. At the moment, there will be no capability for this to be tied into any existing purchase order function. So thank you for that question, Paul. I hope that helps and answers your question. I've got another question here from Paul. Can you post the invoice into our accounting software on receipt and have it blocked until the approval process is complete? Unfortunately not. We understand that that is a kind of a typical process with some pure data capture tools. Obviously with the embedded approval process, it's our belief and best practice to not be posting any transactions into the accounting software until they have been fully approved. So when it comes to accruals, you can access all of that information within iComplete. You can see the invoices that are pending approval. You can accrue for them based on the information within iComplete, as opposed to, potentially cluttering up your accounting software and risking an invoice that hasn't been validated and approved being paid. Final question, I think, from Humperdinck. Is there an email notification option to bring workflow tasks to the attention of the designated user? So workflow tasks within the system at the moment is purely the approval side. So yes, each user, when it's their turn to approve an invoice, will be emailed with a notification to say that there's an invoice awaiting their approval. You can also configure approver nudges within the system, and that gives you the option to re-notify users of invoices awaiting their approval at certain time periods, or even after, say, 72 hours, you could opt to then notify a secondary approver that there's an invoice awaiting approval. If you have a high volume of invoices and therefore a high volume of approvals, you can provide an approval user with a daily report, which is one email a day as opposed to potentially multiple emails, which gives them a list of all of those invoices that are awaiting their approval. Okay, fantastic. So I think we will leave it there this morning. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for those questions. If anyone does have any other questions that come up after the session, then please do drop me an email or contact me on Twitter. My information is on screen. And I look forward to speaking to you all and understanding how we might be able to help. So thanks again for joining. Have a great rest of the week. Enjoy your Easter break. And this session is now concluded. Thank you.